What is up, YouTube? Today we'll be talking about the second movie in the 1930s era of movies. This is 1931, the first film in the 30s decade. The reason I did Mummy was because I haven't watched The Mummy that much, and I didn't really. It is up there for me, but this movie is a lot. I like this movie a lot more. I decided to do that one before this one because I know a bit more about this and stuff like that. So without further ado, let's get into this movie. And the movie we're going to talk about is another Karloff's movie, and that is Frankenstein, a Mary Shelley's adaptation of her novel. Obviously starring Boris Karloff and Colin Clive as Dr. Frankenstein. As you can see here, Boris Karloff plays Frankenstein's monster. That's a mistake that a lot of people make. I never really thought about it, to be honest. I've made the mistake in the past. And even the later movies of the Frankenstein series, they make the mistake of saying the monster is Frankenstein, which isn't correct. Frankenstein is the creator of this monster. And it's pretty common. I can see where people make the mistake. It's the same thing with like the Legend of Zelda, Legends of Zelda and stuff. Everyone thinks that the protagonist is Zelda, but in fact his name is Link. And it's the same concept with this movie. They think about the monster because that's the majority of the movie. That's why you're watching it. That's what the movie is all about. That's about the monster, and a lot of people forget that Frankenstein belongs to the doctor, not the monster. I'm not hating on anything. I'm just putting that out because a lot of people do it, and I see it in every time I talk about this movie. They say, "Oh, I love Boris Karloff as Frankenstein," or even Bela Lugosi, he played Frankenstein in the later ones, and they say, "Oh, I like Bela Lugosi." Bela Lugosi? Yeah, Bela Lugosi as Frankenstein. Common mistake. I'm never like, hey, no. I never get angry or anything. I just say, no, here's a doctor, and then that's the end of the story. I don't go on about like, oh, you should know your fucking thing, blah blah blah. That's not my thing, but yeah, that's just a common mistake that I want to get out there, and hopefully it helps you recognize between the doctor and the monster. This movie to me is my favorite one in the 1930 decade. One of my favorite Boris Karloff's movies. I absolutely enjoy the heck out of this film. I recommend this to anyone who wants to get started into the series because this, compared to The Mummy, is not as fast as we're used to this day. We're used to, okay, we got the characters out of the way, we got the backstory, and then we jump straight into it. These films are for movie lovers, for movie people who want to sit down and watch a art of a film and stuff like that. So it's not going to be highly what's the word, like, obviously there was no computers, it's all practical effects and stuff like that, and the pace of it might seem too slow for many people. I've heard a lot of people say, I don't like Frankenstein, this one, or I don't like Dracula or stuff like that because it's too slow. And I like I said, I don't hate on anyone who doesn't like these films. I'm not doing this because I think this is the most popular thing to do. I'm doing it because I love it. And when I hear someone have a different opinion to me, I love to be like, but why do you hate it? The common thing is it's too slow, it's not scary, stuff like that, which is valid. I don't find it scary. I can tell that it's slow, but because I love this film so much, I don't care. Like it's a movie for me. I love this movie, but I can see their points in why they think it's slow, and that's the case with all these films. If you don't like The Mummy and this decade isn't for you. Maybe come back for decade 60s to 70s. But I prefer you watch all of these. But if you're into more faster paced monster movies, come back then. But if you're thinking of coming, if you want to get straight into the action, gore, and stuff like that, wait until the 1970, 1980. But yeah, we'll talk about them later. Today we're talking about Frankenstein, getting off track. Once again, Boris Karloff's best movie, in my opinion. He does a phenomenal job. One of my favorite scenes is when you first see the monster interact with anyone else, and he walks in slowly backwards, and the pan in is fucking perserb. You know the word I'm trying to say, I can't say it. And I absolutely love that scene. I'll try to put it in, and if it's not, then obviously I couldn't get it off YouTube or anything like that. And I don't like to make it guerrilla style and record the screen, just because I reckon that doesn't look as good, and you can't capture it good enough. But if I can find it, I'll put it in, and you guys can enjoy that scene. So once again, I'm not going to get into the story too much because, let's be honest, and let's be frank, everyone knows the story of Frankenstein, this crazy doctor. He creates life out of human parts, and basically the best line in all cinema is, "He's alive!"
Look, it's moving. It's alive. It's alive. It's moving. It's alive. Oh, it's alive. It's alive. It's alive. It's alive.
And funny thing about that, the people who air movies back then, they didn't want him to be too godlike, because obviously that's against like the law, ratings and stuff like that, and they would have to cut that segment out. The lightning, there's a part in it when he's talking and the lightning is over him and you can't hear what he's saying. That's because that's a clever editing trick to cut out some of the stuff he was saying, and some stuff that would get that scene kind of like cut out of the film. And sadly, I wanted to hear what he says, but I couldn't make his lips. But it was good they did that, because I reckon that scene, if that scene wasn't in it, it would be a completely different movie, and it kind of sets the tone of Frankenstein. He doesn't believe the monster's a bad thing. Everyone else does. It's his creation, and he thinks that it should be alive because he spent his whole life on this, and he doesn't want it to die or anything. And another awesome thing about this film is Colin Clive. He plays Dr. Frankenstein to its fullest, and I absolutely love him as Frankenstein. And later on in the film, later on in the series, Frankenstein gets played by Christopher Lee, I think. And he plays a whole different part in the later films. But Colin Clive in this film is like awesome. I don't know why I can't say that word, but he's fantastic. You see him slowly go mad over this creation that he's creating, and once it's alive, you feel like you see and you feel it feels like he's not acting. It's very hard to describe, but it's definitely hit or miss with Colin Clive. If you, it's never I never heard anyone say, "Oh, he was alright in this" or anything. I've heard he's awesome in it or he's shit in it. It's just a very hit or miss character for some reason, and I don't know why. Um, but for me, he was like awesome. I really enjoyed him, and he never really felt out of place in this film, and that's another thing in itself as well. Nothing in this film feels out of place. In the Mummy, there was a lot of parts in it where I could have said, yeah, that could have been cut out, or um, stuff like that. But in this, it feels every single detail that has been set in there um, was there to stay. And obviously, the lightning I talked about before, that had to get cut for a number of reasons. But everything else is such a fantastic film. I see a lot of people, and a lot of not a lot of people, a lot of like film classes pick like films like Psycho and Citizen Kane, films like that, and they should really start thinking of showing Frankenstein, because honestly, yeah, not many people will like it, but this was very revolutionary in the monsters and in the horror film in general, because it took like, you see comic book movies all the time, but back then you'll never think of taking book a book as insane as in like sinister as Frankenstein and turn it into a film. And it's crazy to think about. In 1930, they actually aired this. A monster made out of human parts and a doctor that brought it to life. Uh, Back then, a lot of films never really showed like God in different aspects and stuff like that, because that's how the ratings got down and stuff. Not ratings, but like the films didn't get polished because of that and stuff like this. And I feel like Frankenstein made new ground on this whole film genre, and it's one of my favorite films. Funny enough, the monster, as non-human he feels and he seems, he does show human traits in this film. One of my favorite scenes in this film as well is the kid scene. If you've seen this movie, this pops in your head straight away. But I'll quickly show it here.
I can make a boat. See how mine float? No, you're hurting me! No!
So you see the girl chucking some stuff in the water, and they're fine. So he's like, yeah, okay. And then he chucks in the girl thinking she'll be fine, and when she doesn't come back up, he he gets scared because he doesn't know what he did, because he was curious and the kid was doing it, so he'll be like, yeah, I did chuck you in the water. A lot of people say that's a comedic thing in the film, and they laugh all the time. But for me, it's first time I watched it was pretty funny and stuff like that. But more I watch it, more and more I keep on thinking how fantastic that film is. That scene is, because in that one scene it shows how human this monster is compared to the Mummy and compared to all the other monsters I'm going to talk about. And this is the most human monster out of them all. And this scene just shows it so perfectly. And he was curious, so he tested something out, and when it didn't happen, he got scared, and then he ran away. Because that's what humans do. When they get scared and when they don't know what to do, they just leave it, and they can't really make this situation better. So the best thing to do is get out of that situation. And yeah, a lot of people overlook this scene in a disappointing way. And yeah, that's just what I take from the scene. You can take it as a comedic value if you want. I don't really care, but that's what I took from the scene. And if you watch it again and listen to my words, that scene becomes a lot deeper than you think. Sadly, I don't have Bride of Frankenstein. I heard that is quite a superior film to this. But like I said, I'm only going to talk about the movies I own, because there's no point me saying, oh, go out and watch Bride of Frankenstein when I don't have Bride of Frankenstein and I haven't seen it and stuff like that, because to me that's redundant. I don't want someone to come up to me and say, oh, you should go watch this film that just came out, and I go, oh, what did you think of it? And they say, I haven't seen it. To me, that's like them saying, go check this restaurant out. I haven't eaten from it. I can't give you any opinions on what food to get or if the food's any good, but go there because I heard this one guy say it's good. And I know a lot of people come here to come here and listen to me talk about movies, but I'm talking about movies that I've watched, that I love, that I can sit down and physically grab and put it in, or even Netflix. I'll give it that. If it's on Netflix, I'll watch it. But eventually I'll get it on DVD, Blu-ray. But I just don't see the point about talking about movies in this way that I haven't seen. So it's only going to be movies that I have seen, and when I do see it, I'll do the review and put it in the dedicated file playlist. But once again, that is Boris Karloff's Frankenstein. If you haven't seen it, go check it out. Fantastic film. Once again, the reason I'm not getting into it is because there's 100 different Frankenstein movies. There's Frankenstein shows. There's that I, Frankenstein, that was pretty popular when it came out. It bombed, obviously. I think it was I, Frankenstein. And there's like Frankenweenie. There's a whole different spoofs. There's even Hotel Transylvania with all these monsters in it. Obviously, that's a kid show and it doesn't portray what the monster movies are. But he's in that. And you kind of get the gist of what he is and stuff. So he's Frankenstein's monster. There we go. That was a common mistake. I make it occasionally. I go Frankenstein and then I go, wait, no, Frankenstein's monster. Going back to what I said before. But Frankenstein, fantastic film. You should definitely go check it out. So if you've seen Frankenstein, let me know how you feel about the whole story. What you think of Boris Karloff as the monster, and what you think of Colin Clive as Dr. Frankenstein. And just comment your opinions on it. Any questions about it, just put in the comments. I'll definitely answer all those. And yeah, just look out for the next one. But the most important thing, let's talk movies. So, and just before I go, I made a mistake saying that Christopher Lee played the Frankenstein, Dr. Frankenstein, but it was actually Peter Cushing playing Dr. Frankenstein and Christopher Lee playing the monster. Just got that mixed up.